Golden Globe 2021 award winner Minari Movie story explained. In Ac Minari, writer-director Lee Isak Chung documents the discovery of happiness in rural Arkansas of a South Korean immigrant family. The film is named after a Korean word for a kind of water drop, as Soon-ya Yun Yoo-jung tells her grandson David Yi Alan Kim to call it medicine. Can be used or added to any meal, kimchi, or soup. Plant Y serves as a metaphor for the struggles of the family so that they can cope with their new life and day-to-day challenges. From David's point of view, Chung told this semi-autobiographical story, effectively using the young character as a filmmaker's surrogate. Set in the Reagan era, Minari appears like a remembrance of a cherished memory, ripe with melancholy. Here is everything you need to know about the ending of the film. Minari Plot Details: what happens in the movie? Having spent a large part of his early youth in California as chicken sexers, Jacob, Stephen Yeon, and Monica Yi Han Yi Ri moved 4 people from their family to the green pastures of Arkansas. Jacob hopes to become a successful farmer, producing Korean vegetables for the growing Korean population of the southern states. 5 acres as a hobby, he tells his reluctant and confused wife, explaining why he has acquired 50 acres of the best dirt in America. All Yi family members, his parents and his sister Ann, Noel Kate Cho, except David, were born in Korea. But the main source of conflict is not immigration from the country of origin, but a transfer from California. The discussion that everyone begins to feel in their ramshackle trailer intermittently remains within Monica throughout the film. With his growing financial woes and David's heart problems, and you have a recipe for a disintegrated family. In his efforts to connect with new neighbors, Yees becomes part of the local church and almost inevitably encounters accidental racism, which stems more from ignorance than from malice. Individually and collectively, they get on well as friends, the most prominent of which is the city freak Paul, Will Patton, the embodiment of the intense faith that resonates in that part of the country. The plot changes after the introduction of Monica's mother Soon-ya and her boundless optimism. She embraces her new life with a certain childhood surprise that is also absent in Jakob. And this eventually improves things for David, whom his parents have always kept under constant surveillance due to his heart condition. While discovering his wealth with his grandmother and sowing minaret seeds, David must have a child for the first time in his life. Minari ending: does the Y family continue to live in Arkansas? Yes, both counts. As the film ends, Jacob and Monica decide to make the Arkansas farm their permanent home. This is a decision that has not easily gained consensus. One of the main reasons for the family coming from California and Arkansas is that unlike Jacob, Monica was not a fast enough sexer in the former state. But part of the disappointments with his life at Golden State was Jacob. He has spent a decade as a sexer and strives for something more rewarding than that job. The relentless bouts of fickle arguments show that Yees has little to show for her decade-long hard work, doing work she doesn't like. Jacob is the oldest son of his family, and the responsibility of taking care of his relatives at home falls on his shoulders, as is often the case in conservative societies. However, it is done to them that by the time the film opens, Monica has expressed her displeasure for it. In his view, the money belonged to his children, and Jacob should not take it away, especially when he did not send the money to his mother. Even after her mother arrives, Monica continues to struggle with her new circumstances. While she was in California, she was surrounded by other Korean immigrants, which instilled a sense of community. She tries to convince Jacob to move the family closer to the Korean community in a nearby city. The problem is, Jakob does not hold particularly high opinions of other Korean immigrants. When Paul's future buyer cancels his order for Jacob's produce, it is demonstrated to Paul in his disheveled crowd. For Jacob, the farm is his direct path to dreaming up the proverb, and he tries hard enough for it. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, success remains elusive due to things over which we have no control. The farm eliminates financial issues from the beginning. Jacob refused to hire a water dodger, people who speculatively find underground water using a forked branch. Instead, he discovers water by locating low bases. But the well he digs soon dries up, and he has no choice but to use county water, meaning the family will now have to pay for one more thing they can't afford. After the Dallas deal, Jacob realizes that if he starts rotting, he will face financial ruin if he finds no other buyer for his produce. This affects his productivity in the local hatchery, where both he and Monica work. But the biggest problem for the couple, as well as their biggest source of controversy, remains David's health. The farm is located about an hour away from the nearest hospital, and Monica believes they are constantly putting her son's life in danger. So, after the family, in addition to Soon-ya, travels to Oklahoma City to meet a specialist there for David's condition, Monica gives her husband an ultimatum to choose between her family and the farm. To his surprise and terror, he chooses the latter. In Jacob's mind, he has invested too much and has sacrificed too much to return now from this specific trajectory of his life, no matter the outcome. For Monica, her decision comes as a final betrayal. So it becomes almost incongruous that David naturally recovers from his position due to living in Arkansas. Jacob's refusal to choose her family on the farm forces Monica to say that she wants separation. This is a real moment of conflicting feelings for Jakob. In addition to knowing that his son would recover, he managed to secure a buyer in Oklahoma City for his vegetables. But the moment that must be celebrated becomes painful because of Jacob's own passion for success. And yet, eventually, he manages to abandon that passion at the right time. Soon-ya, who has recently suffered a stroke, accidentally sets fire to the barn where Jakob keeps his produce. When Yes returns, Jakob runs into the fire to salvage whatever he can, and Monica soon gives chase. But when the fire turns into a raging inferno, they must decide what is most important to them and leave the rest. They rescue each other, and in the process, revive their relationship. The film ends with a trip from a water dowry, pointing to a location for the next well. Jacob and Monica marked the site with a stone, meaning that the farm would be their home from now on. In the concluding scenes, Jacob and David go up the creek to collect Minari, who has grown in abundance since Soon-ja was planted. This is a comment to the future that Yees may experience. Like Minari, the family has finally fully adapted to their new surroundings, while retaining the isolating personality of them. How soon does Ja's arrival affect David and his family in the movie Minari? Suhana soon comes to live with her daughter and her family because of David. California doctors tell Jacob and Monica that their son has a hole in his heart and will need surgery at some point. Since diagnosis, the distraught parents consciously provide David with a sheltered existence. After son Ja's arrival, this change brings with her the values and beliefs of her old country and dismisses her daughters and the ancestors' fears that Jacob felt about David's health. Soon-ya also serves as a link between Monica and Korea by bringing traditional medicines for David and native spices. Due to the many pleas heard between his parents, David is hostile to his grandmother, whom he considers to be the cause of all his problems. He thinks strongly that Soon-ya is not a real grandmother, because she does not cook or cook cookies. But as the film progresses, a touching bond develops between the two. Soon-ya repeatedly tells his daughter to let David have a normal child. And although her requests are shot every time, when she is alone with her grandson, she does the same. He becomes her partner as he discovers the nook and essence of the property. When they explore the creek, and when he plants the seeds of Minari, David accompanies them to watch the entire process as the plant matures. After her stroke, Soon-ya rapidly begins to feel like a burden to her daughter's already struggling family and tries to be as self-sufficient and helpful as she can. Her efforts inadvertently ignite, which increases her shame and self-hatred manifold. As she begins to wander away, her feelings are burdened.